Hey guys, Level Alone here. As part of Elsword's Burning Questions event from September, I'm here to answer your burning hot questions. My fellow creators, Aaron and Astrevia, are also helping answer questions, so make sure you check out their videos on their channels as well. The very first burning question comes from Liselle on Discord. Liselle asks, are there any good tips on how to time using Freed Shadow and Guardian of Elrianode, and when to replenish my fighter pots? For example, if a boss has 30 HP bars left, but after that, there's a second phase and it'll be required to do mechanics? Because sometimes I see DPSs don't immediately use fighters or GOE or Freed Shadow, and I have a hard time timing it effectively. Also, it's kind of hard to know when to reuse Freed Shadow or GOE because I lose track of time. Any good tips? So, Freed Shadow, Guardian of Elrianode, and Concerto all have the same cooldown of 60 seconds, and only one of those titles' effects can be active at a time. So it's recommended to use the one that you've advanced the most with. Freed Shadow is a better version of Guardian of Elrianode, and Concerto later replaces Freed Shadow. The better of the version, the longer and more powerful the buff's effect and uptime will be, so you won't have to worry as much about running out of the buffs at critical moments during raids. As for keeping track of the buff uptime, this comes down to a combination of skill and setting yourself up for success. There are multiple ways you can keep track of your buff title uptime. The first is the simplest, using your awakening timer. Some people subtract a minute from this time to get an idea of when they are able to reapply their buff titles. The second method, which is my secondary preferred method, is to track it using fighter potion buff timers. The fighter potion has a duration of 120 seconds, and the icon is easily identifiable in your buff bar. You should move your buff timer near your skill bar so you can see them without having to move your eyes across the entire screen. The third method, and the one I find the most helpful in longer content like raids, is by using the support's green exascale timers. This is my favorite way to time these titles, as it always guarantees as a DPS you're outputting maximum damage with your DPS skills for the resets from green. The downtime is about 65 seconds, so you could technically buff title as soon as you see the barrier on your bar, but be mindful of raid mechanics or situations where the support will delay green. Our next question comes from Kevin Eontrainer on Discord. How do self-buffs affect your damage output? For example, a skill such as Megaton Press takes a while to deal its full damage, so if I use Energetic Body mid-skill, will it increase the damage dealt by the remaining hits? Or is the Energetic Body increase only applied when I cast the skill, and it doesn't matter if it expires mid-skill? By the way, Energetic Body increases your physical attack for 7 seconds with a 20-second cooldown, so you can't 100% upkeep it. This question also applies to the Barian's Fur ornament accessory. If I have 2 stacks of fur, does the all-skill damage buff affect the 3rd skill use, or only the 4th, and so on? Most self-buffs in the game, like Barian's Fur all-skill damage increase, are multiplicative, not additive. As a general rule, you can assume that most buffs and item effects that are tied to in-combat rules, such as while awakened, or upon using X skill X amount of times, are going to be multiplicative buffs. As far as Energetic Body and Barian's Fur applications, the majority of classes and characters snapshot their skill damages to apply all the buffs to the skill that were active when the skill was cast. Running out of a buff during the skill's damage cycle will not decrease its damage in most cases. There may be some fluctuations in damage dealt while awakened versus unawakened, just simply due to certain multipliers, but as a general rule, you can assume most skills snapshot. As for the Barian's Fur ornament application itself, the buff is applied on the 3rd skill use, so it does benefit from the 3rd skill onward for 20 seconds. Our next question comes from Enamym on Discord. How far can a base character get, and which character would you choose? Well, personally, I'm a little biased, and thank you for the question. A lot has changed in the game regarding base characters and their access to in-game systems and progression. A base character can reach as far as Elrianode for dungeon play, but will have some trouble passing Varnamir. This is because the game does require you to be at least 3rd job in order to challenge the first raid. So there's definitely a hard stop there. You must also hit level 75 to enter official PvP, and that's much easier done as at least a first job advanced character. Our final questions come from Nimkuma on Discord. Just a heads up, I only address some of Nim's questions here. Aaron has taken on the training room set of questions, so make sure you check out his video. Nim asks, as a support main, majority of my playtime, what are the features I should focus on to do more damage aside from just learning what my character does? If this applies to you as well, what did you all do to learn your timers on buffs, and how can others learn to get the feel for timers? Personally, as a Blue Hen enjoyer, I feel this question in my soul. Thankfully, the game has made it a lot easier to upkeep buffs and debuffs. Buffs are easy enough to keep track of because they're on your bar, but debuffs have a special relationship with. My best advice on learning timers is to read up on your skill tooltips and pair the buff or debuff timer with the actual real-time cooldown of the skill. For example, if your debuff skill shreds 20% defense for 20 seconds and its cooldown is 8 seconds, you know that you must reapply that debuff as soon as it's off cooldown to ensure it's properly maintained. Additionally, whenever you notice the bosses go into hyper armor, which cleanses all debuffs on them, make sure you start prioritizing debuffs as soon as possible to maximize your party's output. Your party buffs generally have a significantly longer uptime than your debuffs or defense shred. Nim's next question is, as an Avarice main, I feel like I have a lot of leeway in raids, but I always have the feeling that I'm not optimizing my position or piloting. Is such a feeling true? Should I try to learn to optimize even more aside from following mechs and keeping my buffs and debuffs up? What does truly optimizing in a raid mean, if there is a meaning? Well, Nim, Avarice is definitely a flexible pick in raids. She can hyper amplify one player to carry, or spread the love between two different players that have different specializations for optimal clearing. For example, she may vow a Rage Hearts in Orchestra Hall's Part 1, but switch to vowing Daybreaker in Orchestra Hall Part 2 due to Daybreaker's giant enemy slaying kit. Additional optimization for your Avarice would lend itself more to DPS positioning and assisting in dealing damage. Nim's next question is, if I'm thinking about building negative polarize to survive raids, how should I go about clearing solo content like the secret dungeons? Negative polarize is a great way to ensure your survival in raids. If you're particularly struggling with survivability and are thinking of a negative polarized set, just know that it will negatively affect your combat power and it will likely result in you not being able to enter content with that gear equipped. The best way to make use of a negative polarized setup is going to be to have an alternate set with those effects and swap to it within or prior to entering a dungeon or a raid that is difficult to survive in. Nim's final question is, if I apply an elemental shred to a giant boss that has multiple hitboxes, for example, the dragon in 21-4, does the shred apply to the entire boss or just to the particular hitbox I hit, such as the arm and not the head? In this case, I'm asking for Avarice's shred, if that helps. As a general rule, if the hurt box, or the area where the boss takes damage, is connected to the main boss's HP bar, you can safely assume that the shred will be applied to the entire boss itself. For example, in Varnamir Raid, even though you have to defeat each of the 4 monsters' heads, they each have individual health bars and freeze counts. However, in a dungeon like Crimson Cradle of Flames, Part 1's giant boss arms are also part of its main HP bar, and debuffing an arm debuffs the entire boss. Thank you all for those amazing questions. I hope you found my answers helpful and clarifying. I'm happy to answer more questions if you've got them, so make sure you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed this kind of content from me. And that wraps up the September Burning Questions event from my end. Be sure to check out the official Elsword website's content creator page or the official Elsword Discord's official creator content channel for more videos answering other burning questions. Until next time, I'll see you all in-game.